Hey, Good News family. This is Tana Heineman, the host of our Now What podcast. Our desire is to walk alongside you as we grow together in our understanding of God and His Word. Each week, we get to unpack the message with our pastors as well as everyday people in our church family and help answer the question, now what do I do with what I just heard? We love that you're here with us, and we hope you're challenged and encouraged as together we unpack Sunday's message.
Hello, Good News family. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sarah. I am filling in for the lovely, wonderful Tana, who is, again, literally out saving souls in East Africa, or at least praying to do so. She is on the trip with the team, and they get back this week. So we're excited for them to return and hear all about the wonderful things that happened. But before that, we are going to do this podcast, and we have a special guest with us today, Mr. John Frost. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for making time out of your day to allow me to come join you today.
Of course, yeah.
I've been back in the day when it was Good News. I've been going here ever since about 2009.
Okay.
I have a wife and 2 kids. Shout out to Trey and Cole because they probably want to see themselves and hear their names on the podcast.
Yes.
And what I do for a living, I get the great opportunity of serving Dome University and overseeing enrollment management and marketing and spreading the good news about how education can change your lives. So I really appreciate being here today.
Yeah, we're so glad that you're here. One quick thing that we usually do before we jump into the sermon or the message from yesterday is a getting to know you question. So because yesterday we started handing out or having available to the church family our Easter invitations, I was thinking, what is one invitation that changed your life? Who wants to go first?
All right, I'll let John go first.
Oh, you know what? Just recently, I would say within the last 3 or 4 years, because we actually moved to Illinois and then we moved back. And when we moved back, we happened to meet J.N., who serves here at the church, right? And so he invited us to his kid's birthday party. And because of that, when we went to his birthday party, we was able to meet Tom. And we was able to meet Tom. Tom invited us to his small group. And that was phenomenal because we was able to connect with so many different people. So that was an invitation that changed life because it connected us more with, Good News Church and also being part of a small group.
Yeah.
So shout out to them.
I love that. That's a great one.
Yeah.
All right. What about you?
That's awesome. So mine was, I have to say, is the invitation from my dad when they were taking their youth and young adult group to a conference in Los Angeles, and I was not saved, and Dad invited me. He said to help him drive because they were driving a couple of vans, and he's like, and I don't want to trust anybody else, it's a long trip, so will you come? And so that invitation literally changed my life because it's how I ended up. I went thinking, well, I'm just gonna go and help them drive, and then I do my own thing in LA and go party it up, but God had other plans, and that's where I ended up giving my life to the Lord. So that invitation just to come and help him drive, right, was changed my life.
His tricks worked.
Yeah, they worked. Yeah.
He knew.
I have my own plan, but God had other plans that were much better.
That.
Yeah.
I will say when we first came to Good News at that point, Glad Tidings, I was a senior in high school, so it was a very long time ago, and the youth, which was called Glad Tidings Youth at the time, what we called the West Fellowship Hall, now the student auditorium, was being remodeled. So that summer, all the small groups, which we called cell groups, were meeting in people's homes. And my sister and I, there are 6 of us in my family, but my sister and I were invited to somebody's small group, their home. And I remember we were probably 16 and 17 or 17 and 18. And we went to their house and we went up to the door and we were both like, I don't know if we should do this. I don't know. This is so, this is so awkward. And we knocked on the door and we're like, let's just run back to the car. They won't see us. And we were on the verge of running back to the car when somebody came and opened the door. But the good news is that they were so friendly and so fun and welcoming to us. And so that invitation changed our lives because then we kind of cemented ourselves, our family here at Glad Tidings /Good News, and have kind of been here ever since a little bit. So yeah, it was an invitation to community and relationships. And so it just kind of changed our lives. So
2 invitations to groups. So that's a
Nice plug for small groups.
If you remember, if you were a part of Huddle yesterday, I was encouraging people to hand out these invitations. And I won't go into the detail of that story, but you never know how an invitation can change. An invitation is a seed that's planted, and you know, we plant the seed, and God does the rest. So I encourage everyone to invite people to church on Easter Sunday.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's jump into yesterday's message. I want to kind of a little bit go back to what I don't know what we would call it, like our habits. Our habit stacking is what we've kind of mentioned it, but those 3 questions, and Pastor Jason started with them, you know, when we first started our James series 2 weeks ago, and it's a reoccurring theme throughout, and it's what will I intentionally think, what will I intentionally say, and what will I intentionally do? And you started your message yesterday with the example of driving.
Yes. Wonderful. Amazing.
Which I appreciate your honesty and authenticity, because same. I wanted to share a quick story about how I implement that. I have a 9-year-old, Lainey. If you know Lainey, she's 9 going on 19. And we were driving the other day, actually, and I'm on my way home. She talked me into going to Target. And so we're on our way home, and this person behind me apparently thought I wasn't going fast enough. And the speed limit was 25, okay? I was going faster than 25, probably faster than I should have. But still, you know, I wasn't like, you know, so slow. And so I saw them starting to go around me. And my first thought was, who the heck do they think they are? What are they doing? What an idiot. They're putting people in danger. And so I see him go around, and all these thoughts happen like that. And I look, and I see him come around me, and I kind of glare out the side, and Lainey picks up on it, and she goes, Mom, is that person supposed to be doing that? And I go, no, they're not supposed to be doing that. And she goes, you know, maybe they're having a really bad day.
Oh.
And I was like,
from the mouths of babes.
oh, yeah. Maybe they're having a really bad day.
Oh, wow.
So when I changed my thought, it instantly changed what I said and stopped me from doing something that I probably would have regretted.
Yeah, that's good.
So I was like, oh, yep, you're right, 9-year-old child of mine. You're right. So I don't know if you guys have any other stories or examples of how something that you changed the way that you thought ended up changing your behaviors, because like you mentioned yesterday, our thinking produces our feelings, and our feelings drive our behavior.
Yes.
You have anything, John?
Oh man, just a ton, right?
Changing your thinking?
Yes. I can go on so many different scenarios, but I'll go somewhat deep. Real quick, growing up where I grew up at, you know, it was really taught about eye for an eye, right? And not really having forgiveness, but having vengeance, right? So if somebody does something to you, you got to get them back. Right. And so being able to grow and learn and have forgiveness, and just like your 9-year-old said, is maybe they're having a bad day. Not everything's a slight, right? Not everything is technically against you.
Right.
They just happen to be going through something that may trigger some type of reaction that may be directed towards you, but it's not necessarily about you, right? So I think one of the things that I learned a long time ago was growing up in the South, and we're really big on like capital punishment, like, you know, things like that. And not to get too deep with it, but I changed my mind about that because it's just like there's more to a story than just what the headline says, right?
Sure.
And so being able to read into that and understand and be seeking more forgiveness and vengeance, I think is usually going to give you a more positive outcome. So that changed my behavior.
Yeah.
That's real good.
I love that.
Good.
One of the other things, just because I think this is so important and it's very practical, when I changed the way I thought about giving, specifically in the tithe, that's something, Pastor Jason has talked about that. That's something practical that he's always been able to do. And I was always able to do it when we made less money, if that makes sense. It sounds so silly, like, because, you know, when we were getting, Jake and I, when we were getting paid $500 a week, it was like, oh, $50. Okay, that, whatever. And then as your income increases, like you mentioned yesterday, you're like, oh, wait,
How much?
How much is 10%?
Yeah.
How much is that? But just like you mentioned, God is like, well, you can have your old income back.
Yeah.
And I think by changing my thoughts of how much am I giving rather than then changing it to look at what God has done and look at what God is still increasing, it's a discipline and it's the habit of, nope, this is just what it is. I know that God can be trusted with my finances. I know that God will meet my needs. So it's his. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it is a struggle when it comes to that specific thing. Prayed with a young man yesterday after service, and he's looking for a job, and asked me to pray with him on many different topics. But the job thing was very interesting because he shared with me, I wanted this job, and I prayed, and I told the Lord that if I get the job, I'm going to tithe and I'm going to give to the church. And then he got the job, and he didn't tithe because it was difficult. And then it was he said he began to justify, like, I got a lot of bills, I'm gonna need money for this, I need money for that. And then he said he ended up losing the job. And so, and I was trying to help him understand, like, hey, listen, like, it's not about, like, I wanted to make sure that he understood that it's not God punishing him, but there are promises that the Bible is fairly clear on, like when we actually keep our word to the Lord, and when we actually are about what we say we're going to do and we obey. So, like, I'm like, I don't know why you ended up losing the job, and I don't want to get into that conversation. Well, whatever, it could have been something you did, it could have been whatever, but the reality is that God is more pleased with my obedience. And so, like, that is a huge component for the Lord. So that whole thinking, it's important because, like you're saying, you need to obey. In that circumstance, what Lainey reminded you are obeying the Lord and actually loving those who are unlovable, right? Or extending grace to that individual. Like me, acting in a way that I shouldn't be acting, and then how it is, like your thought begin to creep in, because then all day yesterday I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't have given all that, whatever, what people are gonna think about me, and you start thinking some sort of way, and it's like, well, I'm a leader here, and then I am acting like an idiot, whatever. But the reality is that all of us, I don't care who you are, we have instances when we do not act like a child of God, right? That we do not act like we are disciples of Christ. And so I don't want our Good News family to feel like I have it all together. Right. And I know that PJ feels the same way. Like we are a work in progress. Sure. Every single one of us. Last night we had an opportunity to hang out, John and his wife and stuff, and like I told the guys, a friend of mine said, like, when you look around the room, you say, I know that you're all screwed up. I just don't know how yet, right? Yes. Like, I don't know how. So it's like, I don't ever think that everybody has it all together, even if they look that like they do. And so, but the thinking is where it begins. I mean, the battle is here, battlefield of the mind. And so, how a man, the Bible is clear how a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And so what does that mean? I mean, thinking in your heart, deep inside, you have thoughts, you have things that are, and then so is he, that's who you become. Like how you're thinking, that's what you're becoming. So it's very, very important. And I think that, this study in James is really hitting home.
Yes,
yeah. Speaking of that, I wanted to talk about, Let's just start with the verses. Now, a couple weeks ago, when I reminded you that I would be doing this podcast with you, I said, what scripture are you going to be speaking from? And you told me. Do you remember what you told me?
Yeah, I do.
He was like, it's like the 3 worst verses in the first book of James. And I was like, oh, come on, it's not that bad. And then I read them and I was like, oh, yeah, good luck with that. Because they're so countercultural to the way that we think. Right. And I think the way that a lot as Westerners, but also Nobody wants to be poor.
Yeah.
So let's read what it was. It was James 1, 9 through 11. Believers who are poor have something to boast about, for God has honored them. And those who are rich should boast that God has humbled them. They will fade away like a little flower in the field. The hot sun rises and the grass withers. The little flower droops and falls, and its beauty fades away. In the same way, the rich will fade away with all of their achievements. So, just like Pastor Jason had started with count it all joy when you face trials of many kind, now James is like, also consider yourself, if you're poor, you have something to boast about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I would like to have plenty of money and not have any problems. Like, that's my first thought.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So James writes this very practical letter to the Jews who were in the Jewish faith or the Jewish community, and telling us, be excited about, or when I hear boast about being in the Lord, that's like something to brag about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brag about not having any money.
Yeah.
What?
But there's a why behind it. So the why is because God honors you. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where the big countercultural thing comes into play. So we seldom talk, and you hear people of faith talk about the upside down kingdom of God, is because, Jesus, God started it. He was like, Jesus is king, yet he came as a slave to serve humanity. And that makes no sense. Kings don't do that.
Yes.
A king is not born in a manger. A king doesn't, show up riding on a donkey. So all of these things, and where countercultural is that upside down kingdom component. Those who want to be great need to be a servant to all. And so it's if you want to, if you give, you're blessed. It's more blessed to give than to receive. All those things are so countercultural to us. It's oh no, blessed is to receive.
Yes.
Give me. Mm-hmm. And James is saying here that basically you're poor, you have something to boast. Mm-hmm. And your boast is that God values you, that he honors you, that he respects you. And those things may not be really something that for us in our Western minds here in 2025, we think, well, so God honors me, so big deal. Mm-hmm. Well, understanding that the poor many times and cannot perhaps bring sacrifices to the temple. The poor will not pay the tithe. Mm-hmm. And then in that culture, if that was the reality and you chose to feed your family instead of giving the tithe, now you're not allowed in the temple. Mm-hmm. So now, from the religious leader's perspective, the favor of God is not upon you. So you were poor, and there's a reason why you're poor. And you have no access to God, and you have no access to the kingdom of heaven. That was the cultural and religious mindset of that time. Mm-hmm. So now, as a believer who surrendered their life to Christ and is part of this body of believers, you're thinking, man, I have no value. Mm-hmm. I don't have a place, a community. Like you guys both talked about the invitation to these life groups and how you felt like you found a community and people that love you, and now you begin to grow and all these things. Now, these people, you're poor in that community, you don't have access to these things.
Yes.
And so, James comes and says, no, boast about this, that God honors you. Mm-hmm. And that is so shocking and transformative, if you will, when you don't know if truly there's any value in your life. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you mentioned yesterday was based off that NIV commentary, that 90% of the people of that time were what we would be considered poverty line or below, where it's not like a paycheck to paycheck. It's like a day to day. Am I going to be able to feed my family today? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What are we going to eat for our next meal? They didn't know where that was coming from. And yet he's like, boast about being broke, because I think it demonstrates and reminds us of our need for God.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there's ever been a time in either of your lives where this has been true or this has been proven. I know for Jake and I, when we were, young, earlier in our marriage, we had some really difficult financial times. And I always thought it was, well, we made a mistake or we did something wrong. Or like you mentioned, like this must be punishment because we chose the wrong path or we made the wrong decision or, whatever the case might be. But that's also the time that, and you mentioned it yesterday, when Jesus is your only option, you're very aware of your need for him in your life. So I don't know if you guys have anything to share, any personal stories about that.
Yes. So there's so many layers with that, right? So when you're broke, I guess the way I look at it, if I can conceptualize it, is when you're broke, you don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
That's right.
You don't want to be seen.
Yep.
Because you don't want people to see that, man, my shoes don't look too good. My clothes don't look too good. My motor is sounding real loud in park, right?
Come on.
You don't want to be seen. But the gift of it is God still sees you.
Yeah. That's
right.
good.
And so, but when you do have it going on, for lack of a better term, you want to be seen. You don't mind going out. You don't mind doing this and doing that. You want people to see what you have.
Sure.
Right. And so even going back to, again, when we're younger and we're trying to develop, we're trying to grow, we make financial mistakes. I remember when I was younger, when I first got a real check, man, I went through that money so fast. And I was like,
It goes fast.
Yeah, it goes really fast. It's like, why are these people calling me? Because you didn't pay the bill. And so, no, but I think the thing is, just like we mentioned, is that no matter what you're going through, God still sees you. And God still sees and understands you. And you don't want to, I guess, dilute the opportunity of impact by glamorizing when you do have something.
And somebody, I think it was in maybe your life group, or you mentioned one of the gentlemen that you are in a relationship with, said that when things are going well, I don't recognize my need to be in a daily prayer time relationship with the Lord. And that resonated with me because I was like, yeah, when things are going well, I'm like, oh, I guess I don't need anything. But in all honesty, I'm like, no. I need God every day because as we go through, riches are here today and gone tomorrow. And I know in a moment, everything could be taken away. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good reminder of our need for him no matter what, no matter what season. We'll talk later too about being content, and because I know what it's like to have a lot. I know what it's like to have nothing. So
you touch on something is really important. And I agree with you, but there's more to it. So the reason why when things are going well, I cannot forget my relationship with the Lord and that he is there. The reason why I continue to go after him, yes, it is because I know that everything I have is temporary and that could just be gone with the wind, could be burned up like the grass of the fields and all of that. But more importantly, the reason why, and the poor have a keenly aware of their need for God, right? But the reason why we cannot forget God in our times of success and of plenty is because of relationship. So, for example, I have a relationship with both of you, but what if I only talk to you or call you when I need something from you? What if I was just like, hey, John, man, can you help me, can you help me move this stuff, man? You're a big dude, you're strong, can you help me move this? But then I ghost you. You calling me, texting me, and I ghost you for months, and then I call you again and say, "Hey, man, I'm in a bad spot. You got 1,000 till you get You'd be like, man, be like, what? And so, like, right? Like, I'd be like, hey, Sarah, like, can you help me do this here at the office and blah blah. But then you're trying to reach out to me, and I'm like ghosting you. Like, so think about it in that way. So again, thinking. So our relationship with God, it is a relationship.
Absolutely.
He is not a genie that I rub whenever I need him, and he pops up and gives me my 3 wishes. And it is not, I only cry for him when I need help. Yes, it is there, right? call on him and he will answer. But it's not all there is to that. There is a relationship. He's a father. We're his children. He wants to for us to sit, just like we all three of us have kids, and it's like, man, you know how awesome it is when your kids jump on you and they're like, oh, hi daddy, and they love on you, and like, or they're telling you a story that is like all fabricated, and you're like, where do you bring this up? Like, but we love that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's like, so if you think about our Heavenly Father in that way, and it's like, yeah, all of the stuff will be gone, but we continue to have to be in intimacy with him, in this relationship, in communion with him. Why? Because we are relational, because he made us in his image. So I think that's a component that we cannot forget.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry.
No, you go for it.
And to piggyback on that, something that I heard just recently, and I was like, it was spot on. It was a guy, he said, it's more likely that a guy who picked apples has a stronger relationship with God than somebody who worked for Apple.
Oh.
Ah.
Oh.
And I was like, that's no disrespect to Apple, whoever, but it's just like the guy who picks apples, right? Because he's relying on that harvest. He's relying, and he's focused. He's locked in to try to get through that season, right? But somebody who's working for Apple, well, they weren't about that application they're trying to get.
Sure, yeah.
So,
Oh man, that's really good.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, and not only that, it's like you're thinking about God made or man made. It's like, the apples, God is the one that brings the increase.
yes.
And Apple's like, no, it's all fabricated in a factory. And so it's like, when you think about those things, it's like, yeah, man, the one that's picking apples, pray for the farmers. It's like, man, we need rain.
So I shouldn't complain on days like yesterday where it's like, yesterday wasn't terribly rainy, but I should just thank the Lord because the farmers need it.
No, we have some saints here, some older saints at Good News, and that have said that to me, that I'm complaining about whether it's snow or rain, and they say, yeah, but the farmers need it. I'm like, I don't care about the farmers. I do care about the farmers, but I'm like,
We
right
love
now,
the farmers,
I'm just
yes.
in my own little pity party, and I
just
don't want
wish it
this
was
snow.
like really, really warm during the day and then rained all night and then got really warm. Yeah. I mean,
But even like, talk to again one of these wiser saints, and she was talking to me about how, like, hey, but like, you may not like the snow, but the for the farmer is great because it insulates the ground. It's and then it melts slower, so you're providing. So it's not like rain. So rain, like, we can make a dump rain and it may run off, but snow kind of
Seeps in.
a little bit of sun, and then it melts and then provides. And I'm like, okay, why you gotta be so wise? Like,
It's that plug for earth science.
apparently I need to go back and take that class again. That's awesome. But I was just going to say, I love that perspective of, as a parent to child, how would I feel if my kids only talked to me when they needed something?
Oh, yes.
I'd be like, what? But also, isn't that the goodness of God? Because as a mother, I'd be like, you want my son right now, he wants this new backpack and he's about to graduate from high school and he's like, I'll need it for college. And but it's not like a $40 backpack, it's like a $140 backpack. And so he's,
Does it come with free Wi-Fi?
I was like, I go, does it come with a laptop? Like, what? Does it have gold in it? Like, what is so special about it? But it's a brand.
Oh, okay.
So, but he's been asking me about it. But I think, what if the only time he ever came and talked to me was when he's like, Mom, can I get that backpack? Mom, But the goodness of God is that he always welcomes us with open arms, even when we're in that season, we work through it. So, okay. So I also wanted, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, like the, in modern day, we have safety nets set up for society. We have welfare programs, housing programs, things like that. But the people of this day didn't have quite the same resources or mindset. It was a lot of like, I'm going to take care of mine, and sometimes not even that. And so I think it's just really important to remember the concept of what James is saying is so opposite of what they were thinking then, but also even what we think now. Because one of the things that I loved that you mentioned, and you weren't sure who said it originally, but everyone should be rich and famous, because then they'll realize that being rich and famous is not the answer. And I thought that was so
That was good.
so spot on, because we think that money is going to fix all of our problems, and a lot of time, more money, more problems.
Right, absolutely.
You have more money, so that your problems are just bigger, more magnified. And so changing our mindset of what it means to be in need versus what we want or what we should want. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we should be pursuing a relationship with the Lord, but a lot of times we're like, well, if he would just give me, I saw this meme that was like, all I need is a hug, a piece of cake, and a check for $1 million. And it's like, well, that's funny, but that's not necessarily true. Yeah. Yes. So then you went on to talk about Solomon. And when he said, anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all my labors. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless, like chasing the wind. Yeah. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like when you hear those words, and if you read Ecclesiastes chapter 2, like if you read the verses before that, because of the obviously we're sharing on Sunday morning and we have time constraints, but if you take time and read the verses before that, he tells you everything that he did. He tells you, I build bigger homes. I had larger herds and flocks. Like he did everything to find meaning, to anything that he thought was going to bring him pleasure.
Yes.
And that is another thing that I think is why, James saying that the poor should boast, because when you have resources, when you can engage in the pleasures of life, you also get in a dangerous place to be. Yes. Because just as King Solomon said, I deny myself nothing when it comes to the pleasures of life. And so sometimes, or not sometimes, all the time, our flesh wants what it wants.
Yep.
Sure.
And as we know, you have the spirit man and the flesh. And whichever one you're feeding is going to win the battle. So if you have the ability to feed your flesh with fleshly things, before you know it, the spirit man is going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. And there will come a time when a situation comes up in life that requires your spirit man or woman to be strong.
Sure.
Yes.
And if it has not been hitting the weights, if it's only been doing 2.5 pound dumbbells, and this thing requires you to push 300 from that bar, you're not going to.
No.
So the flesh is going to say, hey, move aside. I got this.
Yes.
Right? Because the flesh is stronger. And so I think that those words from Solomon, I'm like, man, someone who had it all, someone who could do it all.
I can't even grasp the concept of having it all. And don't get me wrong, I have a very comfortable life. I always tell my kids, you have everything you need and a lot of the things you want. You know what I mean? So the concept of denying yourself nothing, I'm even like, what is that? What does that look like? So that's hard to even wrap my head around.
I mean, I told PJ, I was like, you know what? To me, the epitome of you really not having to worry about money is like you go anywhere and you don't look at price tags.
Okay. That is so.
Like, yes.
When our kids were younger, and and this is by no means like, oh, we've arrived, but I remember, like Walmart used to price match.
Oh yeah.
And I would go through every ad every week and price match. And my dad, who was in a different season of life, who had raised his kids and had more disposable, he goes, oh, I don't even look at the price tag. He's at the season of life where he doesn't even look at the price tag, and I was like, what? What do you mean you don't? He's like, I just take, and granted, we're talking about like Oreos and, Lucky Charms, not, gold diamonds and all that kind of thing. But again, at that point, it was just so it's funny how what we internalize is like, oh, when you've hit this, you've arrived.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, think about some of us, and some of our listeners can identify with this. Like, you go to Starbucks and you order, what size do I want? You order this size, and you may not even think about the price.
No.
Like, you don't really look at that. But then, like, if you go and look at a car, then you're looking at the price.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so I'm thinking that there's a difference there, right? There are people that just say, I like that car. I'm going to go buy it. Here's the check. Boom.
Yes.
And I don't care. I want this. The same thing like purchasing a house. It's like, I want it in this neighborhood. Actually, I'm going to build it. And I want it this way and that way, whatever.
Yes.
I don't care how much it costs. So those are the type of things. So looking at the life of King Solomon, think about someone that whatever he wanted, he got. And he did not deny himself of anything. And at the end of the day, he's saying, all of this is meaningless. And I think that making that connection with James, it's what I want to do, is the fact that James is saying, all of this that you see now is gone very fast.
Yes.
And Solomon is saying it's meaningless. It's like chasing after the wind.
And that's one of the things too that I think, a lot of times when we're thinking about our journey through this path, right? When you do have it all, to be able to take a step back and have that frame of reference to say, hold up, wait a minute, but this is not satisfying.
Yeah.
It takes a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot to take yourself out of comfort. I mean, like somebody once said, imagine if you said, you know what, I'm just gonna go a week without my cell phone.
Why?
Keep in mind,
would you ever
we
do
all
that?
did that. We all,
Yes.
we all
That's
in
how
the
we
age
grew up,
range that we didn't have a cell phone. But just that would be such a disruption in our lives.
Sure.
But how many of us would be willing to do that just to have a little bit more of an awareness? It would give us more time. It would prevent more distractions, right? And I guess I will also add on to that when you said chasing the wind and how people do that. The first thing, and there's no knock, but the first thing I thought about was social media.
Well,
People are chasing the wind with social media all the time. They're chasing another like. They're chasing another follower. They're chasing another post. And I feel like they're chasing the wind because it's not really.
That matters.
I mean, it's not really tangible. It's nothing.
Right.
It's just, I got 200 people to say yes to a picture.
And I hate to say, but like the practical application is, I don't even know, is TikTok, I think it was like gone. And people were freaking out because they're like, 4 years of work down the drain. But by one, I'm not technological, but like by one flip of a switch, all that, the internet, all your data, all your reels, all your posts can be gone.
Yes.
And what do you have? You've been chasing the wind and you got
Chasing the
nothing.
wind.
You said it. You said, going after something, at the end of it, you'll be empty-handed and exhausted.
Yes.
And I think that's a great example. What do you have to show? And as a mom, it kills me because I see some of these young girls who are posting things and I'm like, why did you put that on the end? I know I'm old. And so it's like,
you're not old. Come on, you're younger than both of us.
yes, but like compared to the teenage girls and the young adult girls, that's what they've grown up with.
Yes.
That's their frame of reference. But me, I'm like, what? You forgot the bottom half of your shirt, And so I just, there's this part of me that's like, no, you're better than that.
Yes.
God has so much better for you than that, But I think that in social media, in some of these other examples of like, financial stability or our dependence starts to happen. We depend on those things. We depend on our bank account. We depend on our savings account. We depend on our cell phone. We depend on social media to make us feel good about ourselves rather than saying, I'm a child of God. I don't need somebody to say, oh,
to validate our existence.
You're so gorge or whatever, the girls post or whatever. And this is not a knock on teenage girls. I'm just saying like,
you have a few of those.
Because I'm like, you don't need that. You don't need that to validate you.
Yes.
But I think you're so right. Like that becomes what we're depending on rather than the Lord.
Yes.
And we have nothing to show, Solomon said it. We got, it's like chasing the wind. You got nothing left. There's nothing to show for it.
And I want to make sure that those listening. So just as you're talking, I have another voice in my head. Yes, guys, I do have
Maybe it's the Holy
voices
Spirit.
in my head. But I want people to know that chasing after dreams, we're not against that.
No.
Right.
I want to make sure that you know that chasing after something that God has placed in your heart, it's not a bad thing. God has given you gifts. He has given you abilities and skills that you have honed, and use those and grow.
Yes.
and go where God is leading you. And as I said in the message, the problem is not having riches.
Right.
The problem is riches having you. And in the same way, dreams, aspirations, those are great. But if those things have you, like that is your number one goal, when you achieve the goal, you will, and mark my words, you will be empty-handed.
Yeah.
Because it will never fulfill you. And that's the thing. Like when James is saying, and may the rich boast that God has humbled you. It is humility, willingly surrendering ourselves to God. Because you said it a moment ago, John, you said, man, you know how difficult it is to deny yourself for the pleasures, or to say, like, a cell phone, be like, willingly say, oh, I'm going to set it down for a week. Like, man, like to inconvenience yourself, or to go without when you know that you can. You know, that's why fasting is so difficult.
Yes.
Like, we don't like fasting. It's like, man, it's hard because I got food at home and everywhere, and every commercial I watch and everything else. And some of us have to actually cook something for other people that are eating. And like, this ain't even fair. So
true.
But that is a great picture of what Jesus did.
Yes.
And again, like I said, to me, the ultimate goal of a believer is to become more and more like Jesus. And what did he do? He had it all. And he said, I'll put that aside because I want you. And so, man, it is hard, but it is doable.
Yeah.
Because it's worth it, absolutely. But it's doable because Jesus told his disciples, I'm not leaving you alone. I'm leaving, but I'm going to send you the Comforter, the Advocate, and he is going to be the Helper, and he will reveal everything that he will bring to remembrance, everything that I've taught you. He will show you things that you do not know. And so the Spirit of God in us is the one that enables us and empowers us to live the Christian life.
And I like what you said there, reminding us, God gives us dreams. Goals are not a bad thing, because we had even talked about in the verse that you pulled from Philippians. Let me read it here. He said, not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. In the in the West, I'm not sure. We'll speak for the United States.
This is where you live, yes.
Yeah.
So just talk about where you live. I was in the West, man. That's a lot of countries in the West.
Let's narrow it down. We talk about, live your best life, be your
Yes.
best self.
Yes.
So I think sometimes
Speak your truth.
Yeah.
Oh,
Cool. I hate that phrase. That's a whole nother podcast. But contentment can be misunderstood as laziness, or if you say, well, I'm content with my position at my job, or I'm content with my smaller home that's a little bit dated or whatever. But we had mentioned contentment isn't about not wanting to better yourself or grow, in your career or things like that. Contentment is a posture of your heart of, God, this is realizing everything is from God, everything is God's, everything is for God. So I think that's a great point, that this is not meant to be hey, just settle, or, don't try to increase your income or things like that. It's like, no, contentment is about knowing who your provider is and depending on him rather than the things, the bank account, the likes, the home, the car, whatever it might be.
Yes.
So,
and I think too, going back to your point, is to not forget that when you are having success, that God has allowed you to have success. Because,
that's good.
I mean, there's something with, you should be able to appreciate the fruit of your labor,
Yes,
right?
yes, because even Solomon said that.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
His hard work.
But then once you have it, what are you going to utilize it for?
And, back to that quote about the Hollywood actor, I thought it was so interesting because typically, this is a general statement, but it's true, people who have the rich and the fame typically have very poor family relationships. They're oftentimes divorced. They're oftentimes have bad relationship with their kids. They oftentimes, have these different stress or whatever health problems. And it's like, we look at them and we think, oh, they got the car, they got the money, they got the home. But they don't have the relationship that I have with my husband. They don't have the relationship that I have with my kids. And I don't get me wrong, I would love to have a pool in my backyard, but I would rather have my family relationships, my relationship with the Lord, my relationship with my church family. I would pick that every day over having a pool in my backyard or whatever the case may be.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
And I think it's also, I'd rather have peace.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, peace of mind. I mean, unfortunately, not all celebrities or whomever, but you can tell they always trying to disconnect.
Yeah.
They're always doing something to disconnect where we're trying to connect. Not that we all got it figured out by no means, but we don't have so many distractions. And that's the thing too that I think somebody made a quote that, when you're at the top of the mountain is totally different when you're at the middle of the mountain. Nobody says, hey, I just want to make it to the middle of the mountain.
Yeah, I know it.
People say, I want to make it to the top of the mountain. But once you get there, you do realize there's a lot of people looking at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's going to be critiques. There's going to be people critical. What are you doing up there? And then keeping in mind, people are trying to get up there too. So then you get a little bit of paranoia.
Yeah, you got to sustain being up there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think when you have that great relationship with God, you understand why you're up there. You know what you need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So as Paul is talking about contentment, and yes, it is a position of the heart, like you were saying, Sarah. John, you were talking about peace. And so this is what contentment looked like. Paul says, I've had plenty. I've been at peace with it. I've had nothing. I've been at peace. So there is something there that tells me, because what tends to happen is, like, if I feel a sense of lack, I may be just frantic and without peace, just or it could be fear, or whatever feelings and emotions are coming up because there's a lack. Or if I'm really, really good and I'm doing whatever I want because I'm successful and all of this, I may not have peace either because of what you were saying. Perhaps it's paranoia. Perhaps it's thinking about, man, this account right here, it's coming to an end of my contract with this company, and now, are they going to renew? Are they not? Because if they don't renew, then I lose $2 million and whatever. And now, but you're not at peace either.
No.
So it's like with a lot and you don't have peace, or with little and you don't have peace. So Paul is saying, listen, I've learned what it means to be content. I've learned that God is the one who sustains me.
Yeah.
And so that is a really good component, and thank you for bringing that up.
I love that. Okay, so wrapping up, the last scripture that you talked about was from Proverbs, and it says, "First, help me to never tell a lie," which I thought was interesting. Another podcast, but important. Second, give me neither poverty nor riches. Give me just enough to satisfy my needs. For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, who is the Lord? And if I am too poor, I may steal and thus insult God's holy name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me what I need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Solomon has a whole lot of wisdom, doesn't he? I think that's a prayer that I think we can use to say, God, number one, I think the whole thing about not telling a lie, as you said, it's interesting. It's not for this podcast, but I think it's interesting that he says, God, these are the two things that I require for that I want you to give me. If you can give it to me before I die, And it's interesting because I'm like, yeah, if God is going to help you not lie, I mean, I hope it's not after you're dead, because you can't talk. But anyway, those are the kind of questions that I ask. Why would you say that? Anyway, but not lie, okay? And give me just enough, just what I need. And those are, again, things that in my mind connect to that thinking, saying, and doing that we were talking about. Because it's like, if I'm going to lie to you, that's a whole thinking process that happens.
Yeah.
There's a wiring that happens. Have you talked to people like, man, I know you lying because I was there, but they say it like they believe it, and it becomes a story. I'm like, that's not how it happened, bro. But like you actually have to fabricate something in your mind, create it, then you have to actually say it, and then your behavior matches that. And it's like, that's so interesting. And then he goes to just give me enough, because if you give me too much, I might be like, I might think I'm too good.
Yeah.
You know, I might be like, I don't need God.
Yep.
And then if I don't have enough, I may begin to think, well, I need to take matters in my own hand.
Yeah.
I need to provide for myself. And I gonna go over there to the, to the Casey's and just gonna, hey, give me the money, right? And so like, but that's real. And I know that perhaps not everybody that's listening will say, well, if I don't have enough, I'm not going to sin against God. Well, in what ways are you robbing God then? Because sometimes when we don't have enough, then we're forced to make a choice, or not forced, but we make choices that we're really go against God, because at that point, then we're not trusting him to provide. And I know it's a difficult conversation, man. Like it's not like, well, just do this, and this, because the reality is like God will provide, and he provides however he chooses, and I don't know how that will be. And so it's like, it's a difficult conversation, but I think for me, that's a prayer, and that's why I wanted to close that sermon with that, with Proverbs 30, because I think it's like, man, just Lord, give me enough to provide for my needs. And even looking at our lives, from the three of us, we have things that we really don't need, that we want them.
Yes.
So, and many of our listeners too, like you could look around and say, oh, like, like your son with a backpack, like, well, that thing gonna cook me a meal? No, it's just I want it
for your college. If that's the case, yes.
But anyway, so
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a great reminder. If you guys don't have anything else to add, we're not quite over time, but we're getting close. So thank you, Good News family, for joining us today. Thank you, John. We loved having you. You have to come back.
This was
Yeah,
fun.
you have to come back when Tanika's here. She's a way better.
Oh, no,
She's a way better host. But remember, as we move forward, remember our questions. What am I going to intentionally think? What am I intentionally going to say? And what am I intentionally going to do? Because it starts with your thinking, and it'll change your behavior. So we love you guys. Join us again next time. Bye.
all right, thank you.
Thanks again for joining us today. It's a big deal to us that you intentionally bring us into your busy lives each week. Our prayer is that you not only listen to a message week after week, but that you actually learn what it means to live it out day by day, moment by moment. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform so others can find us, and tell your friends and family to check us out too. I mean it when I say being with you is one of my most favorite days of the week. Now let's get out there and give away what we're learning about Jesus.